The slap echoed through the pristine white corridors of Soul Grace Hospital like a gunshot. Nurse Elizabeth's head snapped to the side, her vision blurring as pain exploded across her cheek. She stumbled backward, her hand instinctively flying to her stomach, protecting the precious life growing inside her. The medical chart she'd been holding clattered to the floor, papers scattering like fallen leaves. "That's what happens when incompetent staff waste my time," the man said, his voice dripping with contempt. He was tall, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Elizabeth's annual salary, his perfectly styled hair not a strand out of place. His lips curved into a smile that made Elizabeth's blood run cold. Not a smile of joy, but one of pure arrogance, as if he'd just stepped on an insect and found it amusing. Elizabeth's co-worker, Nurse Park, gasped and rushed to her side. "Are you okay? Should I call security?" But the man was already walking away, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the polished floor, that insufferable smile still plastered on his face. He didn't even look back. To him, Elizabeth was nothing. Less than nothing. Just another obstacle in his day that he dealt with and dismissed. What he didn't know was that the woman he just struck was married to the most dangerous man in Seoul. A man whose name was whispered in fear in the darkest corners of the city. A man who would burn the entire world down for her. If you're ready for a story of love, revenge, and justice served cold, stay tuned. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because this is going to be one wild ride. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Elizabeth stood frozen in the hallway, her hands still pressed against her burning cheek. Her ears were ringing, and she could taste copper in her mouth where her teeth had cut the inside of her lip. Around her, other nurses and visitors had stopped to stare, their expressions ranging from shock to pity. She hated the pity most of all. "Elizabeth, we need to report this," Nurse Park insisted, her voice trembling with anger. "That's assault. You're pregnant, for God's sake. What kind of monster hits a pregnant woman?" Elizabeth finally found her voice, though it came out shakier than she would have liked. Who was that man?" "That's Kang Ji-hoon," another nurse whispered, appearing at her elbow. "The pharmaceutical billionaire. His company supplies half the medications in this hospital. He was yelling because his mother's private room wasn't ready when he arrived." "I tried to explain that the previous patient needed more time for discharge," Elizabeth said, her voice growing stronger as shock gave way to anger. "I was polite. I was doing my job. He had no right." "Men like that think they have every right," Nurse Park said bitterly. "They think money means they can do whatever they want." Elizabeth bent down carefully, mindful of her growing belly, to pick up the scattered papers. As she gathered them, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't need to check it to know who it was. Even when he was in meetings, even when he was dealing with his business, her husband always seemed to know when something was wrong. She pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. Sure enough, a message from Daesung lit up her screen. "Are you okay, Nae Sarung? I felt something. Call me." Elizabeth's eyes filled with tears. Not from the pain of the slap, but from the overwhelming love she felt for the man who could sense her distress even from across the city. She quickly typed back, "I'm fine. Just a long day. I'll tell you when I get home." She couldn't tell him now. Not here. Not in a text message. Because she knew her husband, knew him better than anyone else in this world. Kim Daesung was many things, dangerous, powerful, ruthless when necessary, but when it came to her, he was protective to the point of obsession. If she told him now what had happened, he would leave whatever he was doing and this entire hospital would become a war zone. "Let me check you over," Nurse Park said, gently guiding Elizabeth to a nearby empty examination room. "You took a hard hit. We need to make sure the baby is okay." The word of baby made Elizabeth's protective instincts surge even stronger. She had been 3 months pregnant, just beginning to show. She and Daesung had tried for 2 years, had almost given up hope, and then this miracle had happened. This precious, beautiful miracle. As Nurse Park checked her vital signs and the baby's heartbeat, Elizabeth's mind raced. She should report this. She should file charges. But she knew how these things went. Rich men like Kang Ji-hoon had lawyers that could make problems disappear. He would claim she had been rude, that he had merely gestured and she'd exaggerated. The hospital board would side with the man whose company kept them supplied with medications at competitive prices. The injustice of it made her want to scream. "The baby's heartbeat is strong," Nurse Park said with relief. "But you should still tell your husband. Isn't he that businessman who comes to pick you up sometimes? The one with the expensive cars?" Elizabeth almost laughed. Businessman. If only that were all he was. She had met Kim Dae-sung 3 years ago in the emergency room of this very hospital. He'd been brought in with a gunshot wound to the shoulder, accompanied by 6 terrifying-looking men in black suits. The attending physician had been too scared to treat him, hands shaking so badly he couldn't hold the instruments. Elizabeth had stepped in. She hadn't cared who he was or what he'd done. She'd seen a man in pain who needed help, and she'd helped him. She'd cleaned the wound, removed the bullet, and stitched him up while lecturing him about the importance of seeking proper medical care and staying out of dangerous situations. His men had looked at her like she'd grown a second head. Nobody lectured Kim Dae-sung. But he had listened to every word, his dark eyes never leaving her face, a slight smile playing at his lips. "What's your name?" he'd asked when she was done. "Elizabeth." "Elizabeth," he'd repeated, as if tasting the name. "It suits you. It means eternal, doesn't it?" She'd been surprised he knew. "Yes. My mother was Nigerian, my father was American. They wanted a name that meant something lasting. I'm going to marry you, Elizabeth," he'd said with absolute certainty. She'd laughed, thinking he was delirious from pain medication. But 3 days later, he'd returned to the hospital with flowers and a dinner invitation. 3 months after that, she'd learned exactly who Kim Dae-sung was, the CEO of Baekdu Industries, a legitimate import-export business on the surface, but underneath, the head of the most powerful organized crime family in Seoul. She should have run. Any sane woman would have run. But by then, she'd seen the man beneath the reputation. She'd seen his kindness, his intelligence, his surprising gentleness. She'd seen how he protected those he considered family, how he had a code of honor that most legitimate businessmen lacked. And she'd seen how he looked at her, like she was the sun and the moon and every star in the sky. They'd been married 6 months later in a private ceremony. Her father had walked her down the aisle with tears in his eyes, while Dae-sung's men had surrounded the venue in discreet security. It was the merging of 2 worlds that should never have met, but somehow fit together perfectly. Now, as Elizabeth finished her shift and walked toward the hospital exit, every step reminded her of what had happened. Her cheek still throbbed. Her pride hurt even more. The black Mercedes was already waiting at the curb, exactly where it always was at the end of her shift. But today, Dae-sung wasn't sitting in the back like usual. He was leaning against the car, arms crossed, his sharp eyes taking in every detail of her appearance the moment she walked through the doors. She'd seen him in his tailored 3-piece suits at charity galas, charming Seoul's elite. She'd seen him in casual clothes on lazy Sundays, cooking her breakfast. She'd seen him in nothing at all, his body pressed against hers in the dark. But this Dae-sung, the one watching her with eyes that missed nothing, this was the dangerous one. The one that had made him a legend in Seoul's underworld. His driver, Jin-ho, opened the car door, but Dae-sung didn't move. He pushed off from the car and walked toward her, closing the distance in long strides. When he reached her, his hand came up gently to cup her face, tilting it toward the light. His jaw clenched so hard she could see the muscle jump. When he spoke, his voice was deadly calm. "Who touched you?" "Dae-sung, it's nothing." "Who touched you?" Each word was precisely enunciated, cold as ice. Elizabeth's hand covered his, her thumb stroking his wrist in the way that usually calmed him. "Not here. Take me home. I'll tell you everything at home." For a moment, she thought he might refuse. His eyes had gone dark, that dangerous stillness settling over him that meant violence was simmering just beneath the surface. But then he looked down at her belly, visible now beneath her scrubs, and took a deep breath. "Home," he agreed. "But you will tell me everything, Elizabeth. Everything." The drive home was silent except for the soft classical music playing through the car's speakers. Dae-sung's hand never left hers, but she could feel the tension radiating from him. His thumb traced circles on her palm, a gesture of affection that contrasted sharply with the deadly intent in his eyes. They lived in Hanam Dong, in a penthouse that overlooked the Han River. The luxury apartment was a far cry from Elizabeth's modest upbringing, but Dae-sung had made it a home. He'd insisted she decorate it however she wanted, and she'd filled it with warmth, colorful pillows, plants, photographs of their life together. As soon as they were inside, Dae-sung led her to the couch, his movements gentle despite the barely contained rage she could sense in him. He knelt before her, his hands resting lightly on her knees. "Tell me," he said softly. So she did. She told him about Kang Ji-hoon's arrival, about his demands for his mother's room, about her polite explanation that it would be ready in 30 minutes. She told him about the escalating anger, the insults, and then the slap that had come out of nowhere. She told him about the smile, that horrible, arrogant smile as he walked away. With each word, she watched Dae-sung's expression grow colder. By the time she finished, he looked like a statue carved from ice, beautiful and terrifying. "His name is Kang Ji-hoon," she concluded. "He owns a pharmaceutical company." "Dae-sung, I know what you're thinking, but he hit you." Dae-sung's voice was barely above a whisper. "He hit my pregnant wife and smiled about it. I'm okay. The baby is okay. Nurse Park checked. He could have hurt our child." Dae-sung's hand moved to her stomach, resting there with infinite care. "He could have hurt you both," and he smiled. Elizabeth knew that look. She'd seen it once before, when a rival organization had threatened his younger sister. That situation had ended with 3 men in the hospital and the rival boss leaving Seoul permanently. "What are you going to do?" she asked, though she already knew. Dae-sung stood, pulling out his phone. "I'm going to teach Kang Ji-hoon that there are consequences for his actions. I'm going to show him what happens when you touch what's mine." Before you find out exactly how Dae-sung handles this situation, make sure you're subscribed to this channel and hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me what you think Dae-sung should do. Trust me, what happens next is going to blow your mind. While Elizabeth rested on the couch, Dae-sung stepped into his study, the room that she jokingly called his war room. Through the partially open door, she could hear him making calls, his voice switching between Korean and English as he gathered information. "I want to know everything about Kang Ji-hoon," he said to someone on the phone. "His business, his family, his secrets, his weaknesses. Everything. I want it in 1 hour." Elizabeth closed her eyes, one hand on her belly. "Your daddy is very protective," she whispered to the baby. "Maybe too protective. But he loves us so much." She must have dozed off because the next thing she knew, Dae-sung was sitting beside her, gently stroking her hair. The anger in his eyes had been banked but not extinguished. Now there was something else there too, calculation. "I have information," he said. "Kang Ji-hoon is the CEO of Medicure Pharmaceuticals. On the surface, he's a successful businessman, a philanthropist, a pillar of society. Underneath, he's drowning in debt from bad investments and has been cutting corners on drug safety to maintain his profit margins." "How did you find that out so fast?" A small smile touched his lips. "Ne Sarung, I control half of Seoul's information network. Finding dirt on a corrupt businessman is easy." "What are you planning?" "First, I'm going to destroy his business," Dae-sung said calmly, as if discussing the weather. "Then I'm going to destroy his reputation. Then, when he has nothing left, when he's lost everything that matters to him, I'm going to introduce myself properly." "Dae-sung." He silenced her with a gentle kiss. "He hurt you, Elizabeth. He put his hands on you in violence. He could have hurt our child. Did you think I would let that go unpunished? I just don't want you to do something that will take you away from us," she whispered, her hand covering his on her belly. "We need you. I need you." His expression softened, the dangerous crime lord giving way to the man who held her through nightmares and surprised her with breakfast in bed. "Nothing will take me from you. Nothing and no one." But Kang Ji-hoon needs to learn a lesson that apparently no one has ever taught him, that actions have consequences. That night, as Elizabeth slept beside him, Dae-sung made more calls. His network sprang into action with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine. By morning, the first domino would fall. Across the city, Kang Ji-hoon was having dinner with investors, laughing about his day. "You should have seen this nurse at the hospital," he said, gesturing with his wine glass. "Acting like making me wait was acceptable. I put her in her place." His companions laughed nervously. They were used to Ji-hoon's arrogance, his casual cruelty. It was the price of doing business with him. "Some people need to remember their station," one of them agreed. Ji-hoon smiled, the same smile he'd given Elizabeth. "Exactly. Money is power, and I have plenty of it. I can do whatever I want." He had no idea that at that very moment, evidence of his company's safety violations was being compiled into a comprehensive report. He had no idea that his investors were about to receive information that would make them pull their funding immediately. He had no idea that the most dangerous man in Seoul was planning his destruction. He had no idea that the nurse he'd dismissed so casually was loved by a man who would move heaven and earth for her. The next morning, Elizabeth woke to find Dae-sung already up, standing by the bedroom window in his suit, looking out at the city. He looked like a king surveying his kingdom, powerful and untouchable. "You're up early," she said, stretching. He turned to her, and his expression immediately softened. He crossed to the bed, sitting beside her, his hand automatically going to her belly. "How are you feeling? How is our little one?" "We're fine," she assured him. "Dae-sung, you're really going through with this?" "It's already begun," he said simply. "By noon, Kang Ji-hoon's world will start crumbling. But you don't need to worry about any of that. You just need to rest and take care of yourself and our baby." "I'm still going to work." "Elizabeth. I'm pregnant, not fragile," she said firmly. "I love my job. I'm not going to hide because of what happened. Besides, I want to be there to see his face when everything falls apart." Dae-sung studied her for a long moment, then a slow smile spread across his face. "You have a bit of a vengeful streak, don't you, Nae-sarung?" "I learned from the best," she teased. He laughed, the sound warm and genuine, then kissed her thoroughly. "That's my girl. But Jinho drives you to and from work, and I'm assigning 2 of my men to watch the hospital discreetly. Non-negotiable." "Fine," she agreed, knowing when to pick her battles. At the hospital, the atmosphere was strange. Nurses were huddled in small groups, whispering urgently. Elizabeth caught fragments of conversation as she walked to the nurses' station. "Medicure stock is plummeting. Investigation into safety violations. Investors are pulling out." Nurse Park rushed up to her, eyes wide. "Have you heard? Kang Ji-hoon's company is in crisis. Apparently, there's been an investigation into some of their medications. Deaths that were covered up. Falsified safety data. It's all over the news." Elizabeth kept her expression neutral. "Really? The hospital board just had an emergency meeting. We're cutting all ties with Medicure and finding new suppliers. I heard Kang Ji-hoon has been trying to call the hospital director all morning, but no one will take his calls." As if summoned by their conversation, the elevator doors opened and Kang Ji-hoon stumbled out. He looked nothing like the composed, arrogant man from yesterday. His suit was wrinkled, his hair disheveled, his eyes wild with panic and rage. "Where is Director Park?" he demanded, grabbing the nearest nurse. "I need to speak with Director Park immediately." Security was already approaching, but Ji-hoon shook them off. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes, sir," the security guard said calmly. "You're the CEO of a company currently under investigation for negligent homicide. The director has instructed us to escort you from the premises. This is a mistake." Ji-hoon's voice rose to a shout. "This is sabotage. Someone is targeting me." His eyes swept the hallway and landed on Elizabeth. For a moment, recognition flickered across his face, but it was clear he didn't truly remember her. She was just another face, another person beneath his notice. But she remembered him. She remembered the feel of his hand against her face, the sound of his laughter as he walked away. "You," Ji-hoon said, pointing at her. "You work here. Tell Director Park that I need to see him. Now." Elizabeth met his eyes steadily. "I'm sorry, sir. I can't help you." "Can't or won't?" His face flushed red. Do you have any idea what I could do to your career? From what I hear, Elizabeth said calmly, you can't do much of anything anymore. Security guards took his arms, more firmly this time. As they led him toward the elevator, Ji-hoon continued to shout threats and demands, his voice echoing through the corridor. Nurse Park appeared at Elizabeth's elbow. That was incredibly satisfying to watch. Karma really is real. If Elizabeth had thought that was the end of it, she was wrong. That evening, when Jin-ho drove her home, she found Dae-sung in his study, multiple computer screens displaying various news articles and financial reports. Medicure's stock lost 70% of its value today, he said without looking up. 3 major investors pulled their funding. The government has launched a formal investigation into safety violations. Evidence has been leaked to the press about at least 8 deaths that can be directly linked to their substandard medications. Evidence you provided, Elizabeth said. Evidence that existed and was being ignored, Dae-sung corrected. I simply made sure the right people saw it. Everything I've revealed is true, Elizabeth. Kang Ji-hoon has been poisoning people for profit. He deserves everything that's happening to him. He finally turned to look at her. But this is only the beginning. I want him to lose everything. I want him to understand what it feels like to be powerless. Over the next week, Elizabeth watched Kang Ji-hoon's downfall from the unique vantage point of the hospital where it had all begun. Every day brought new revelations, new scandals. The pharmaceutical company that had been his pride was seized by the government. His assets were frozen pending investigation. His society friends stopped returning his calls. And through it all, Dae-sung orchestrated every move with the precision of a master chess player. He's filing for bankruptcy, Dae-sung reported one evening, his hand resting on Elizabeth's belly as they lay in bed. The baby had started kicking recently, and he never missed an opportunity to feel it. His wife filed for divorce this morning. His country club revoked his membership. He's losing his house next week. Do you feel better? Elizabeth asked softly. Now that he's lost everything? Dae-sung was quiet for a moment. I won't feel better until he knows why this happened. Until he understands that his actions had consequences. 2 weeks after the slap, Elizabeth was leaving the hospital when she saw Kang Ji-hoon sitting on the steps outside. He looked like a different person. His expensive suit had been replaced with rumpled casual clothes. He'd lost weight, his face gaunt and haggard. He was staring at nothing, the look of a broken man. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt a strange sort of pity. That feeling vanished when he looked up and saw her. This time, recognition dawned in his eyes. You, he said, struggling to his feet. You're the nurse. The one I. He stopped, and for the first time, Elizabeth saw something like shame cross his features. The one you slapped, she finished for him. Yes. This is all connected to you, isn't it? His voice was dull, defeated. Everything that's happened. It started right after that day. But you're just a nurse. How could you possibly? I couldn't, Elizabeth agreed. But my husband could. Ji-hoon's eyes widened. Your husband? A black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. The back door opened, and Dae-sung stepped out. He was in full business mode, his suit immaculate, his expression cold and controlled. 2 of his men flanked him, making it very clear who he was and what he represented. Ji-hoon's face went white. Kim Dae-sung, he whispered. Oh God. She's your wife? Dae-sung walked to Elizabeth first, his demeanor completely changing as he gently took her hand and pressed a kiss to her forehead. Are you all right, Nae-sarung? I'm fine, she assured him. Only then did Dae-sung turn his attention to Ji-hoon. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Kang Ji-hoon, Dae-sung said pleasantly. I've been wanting to meet you properly. I'm Kim Dae-sung. I believe you've met my wife. Ji-hoon took a stumbling step backward. Everyone in Seoul knew who Kim Dae-sung was, even if they pretended not to. And everyone knew you didn't want his attention unless it was for a very good reason. I didn't know, Ji-hoon stammered. I swear, I didn't know she was your wife. If I had known. If you had known, you wouldn't have hit her? Dae-sung's voice was dangerously soft, So you only assault women you think are powerless? Women who you believe have no one to protect them? It was a mistake. I was stressed. I wasn't thinking. You weren't thinking about consequences, Dae-sung agreed. Men like you never do. You've spent your whole life believing that money and position put you above the rules. That you could do whatever you wanted to whoever you wanted. He took a step closer to Ji-hoon, who looked like he wanted to run but was frozen in fear. Let me tell you what's going to happen now, Dae-sung continued. You're going to prison. The evidence against your company is irrefutable, and you're going to be held personally responsible for the deaths your negligence caused. You'll spend the next 10 to 15 years behind bars. Please, Ji-hoon begged. Please, I'll do anything. I'll apologize. I'll pay. You think I want your money? Dae-sung laughed, but there was no humor in it. I have more money than you ever dreamed of. I want justice. I want you to spend every day of your prison sentence remembering the pregnant woman you slapped and walked away from smiling. I want you to understand that she was worth more than you could ever be. He turned to Elizabeth, his expression softening instantly. Come, Jagiya. Let's go home. I have dinner waiting. As they walked toward the car, Ji-hoon called out, Why didn't you just kill me? Isn't that what people like you do? Dae-sung paused, looking back over his shoulder. People like me? I'm a businessman, Mr. Kong. But to answer your question, death would be too quick, too merciful. I want you to live with what you've done. Every single day, for years. That's much more satisfying than a bullet. In the car, Elizabeth was quiet. Dae-sung took her hand, concerned. Are you upset with me? No, she said slowly. I saw him sitting there, and for a moment, I felt sorry for him. How terrible is that? It's not terrible. It means you have compassion, even for those who don't deserve it. It's one of the many reasons I love you. He pressed a kiss to her knuckles. But don't waste too much sympathy on him, Elizabeth. The man was responsible for 8 deaths that we know of, probably more. He cut corners on safety to pad his profit margins. What happened to him is justice. I know, she said. I never wanted to be the kind of person who takes pleasure in someone else's suffering. You're not, Dae-sung assured her. I am. You're the conscience I never had before I met you. You make me want to be better, even when I'm being ruthless. That should have been the end of the story. Ji-hoon went to prison, Elizabeth continued working at the hospital, and Dae-sung continued running his empire. But life, as it often does, had other plans. 3 months later, Elizabeth was 6 months pregnant, her belly round and prominent. She'd cut back on her hours at the hospital but still insisted on working. She was in the middle of checking a patient's vitals when Nurse Park rushed into the room. Elizabeth, there's someone here to see you. She says it's urgent. I'm with a patient. She says her name is Kang Myri. She says she's Kang Ji-hoon's mother. Elizabeth's hands stilled. Tell her I'll be there in 5 minutes. She finished with her patient, her mind racing. What could Ji-hoon's mother possibly want with her? She'd heard the woman had been ill, that she'd suffered a stroke when her son was arrested. Was she here for revenge? For an apology? The woman waiting in the small consultation room was elderly, probably in her 70s, and obviously unwell. She was in a wheelchair, one side of her face slightly drooped from the stroke. But her eyes were sharp and clear as they fixed on Elizabeth. Mrs. Kang, Elizabeth said carefully. How can I help you? I came to apologize, the woman said, her words slightly slurred but understandable. For my son. For what he did to you. Elizabeth sat down slowly, surprised. You don't need to apologize for his actions. Don't I? Myri's laugh was bitter. I raised him. I spoiled him. His father died when he was young, and I gave him everything he wanted, never taught him the word no. I created the monster who hurt you. Mrs. Kang. Please, let me finish. The older woman's eyes filled with tears. I lost everything because of what my son did. My health, my home, my standing in society. But I deserved to lose it. Because I knew, deep down, what kind of man he was becoming, and I did nothing to stop it. She reached into her purse with her good hand and pulled out an envelope. This is every bit of money I have left. It's not much, just 50,000 won. I want you to have it. For the baby. I know it doesn't make up for what he did, but... Mrs. Kong, I can't take your money, Elizabeth said gently. Especially not if it's all you have. Please. The woman was crying now. Please let me do this one thing to try to make amends. My son is in prison where he belongs. I have nothing and no one. Let me do this. Elizabeth looked at the elderly woman and saw genuine remorse, genuine pain. She thought about refusing again, but she realized this wasn't really about the money. This was about Myri's need for redemption, for some way to atone for her son's sins. Okay, Elizabeth said softly. I'll accept it. And I'll make sure it goes towards something good for the baby. Myri's face crumpled with relief. Thank you. Thank you. She paused, then asked hesitantly, is it true? Is your husband really Kim Dae-sung? Yes. I'm surprised he didn't kill my son. He's not a murderer, Mrs. Kong. He's a businessman who protects his family. And he loves you very much, Myri observed. I can tell by what he did. My husband loved me like that once, before he died. I wish I had taught our son to love like that, instead of teaching him that money and power were all that mattered. After Myri left, Elizabeth sat in the consultation room for a long time, thinking. When she got home that evening, she told Dae-sung about the visit. She gave you money? He asked incredulously. Elizabeth, she has nothing. She's living in a small government-subsidized apartment. I know. That's why it meant something that she offered. Elizabeth took his hand. I want to do something for her. I want to make sure she has proper medical care, that she's looked after. Dae-sung stared at his wife as if seeing her for the first time. You want me to help the mother of the man who struck you? I want us to help an elderly woman who's suffering, who's already lost everything. She's not responsible for her son's actions. She shouldn't have to pay for his sins. You're incredible, Dae-sung said softly. Absolutely incredible. Anyone else would want more revenge. But you want to show mercy. Is that wrong? No, Nae-sarung. It's perfect. It's who you are. He pulled her close, careful of her belly. I'll arrange for her medical care. I'll make sure she has everything she needs. But only because you asked. Okay, we're at a crucial point in the story. If you're loving this journey of love and revenge, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what you think about Elizabeth's decision to help Ji-hoon's mother. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Subscribe now so you don't miss any of our upcoming stories. The months passed. Elizabeth's belly grew, and with it, Dae-sung's protective instincts intensified. He insisted on accompanying her to every doctor's appointment, his dangerous reputation dissolving into nervous excitement every time they heard the baby's heartbeat. It's a girl, the doctor announced at their 7th-month ultrasound. A healthy baby girl. Dae-sung's hand tightened on Elizabeth's. A daughter, he whispered, his voice filled with wonder. We're having a daughter. That night, lying in bed, he spoke to Elizabeth's belly. Listen carefully, little one. You're going to be the most protected girl in all of Seoul. No boy will ever hurt you, because they'll have to go through me first. And trust me, that's not something anyone wants to do. Elizabeth laughed, running her fingers through his hair. You're going to be one of those overprotective fathers, aren't you? Absolutely, he confirmed without shame. She's going to have the best of everything. The best education, the best life. And when she's old enough, I'm going to tell her about how her mother was the bravest, kindest woman I ever met. How she showed compassion even to those who didn't deserve it. You're going to make me cry, Elizabeth said, her voice thick with emotion. Good tears, I hope. The best tears. At the hospital, Elizabeth had become something of a legend. The nurses who'd witnessed Ji-hoon's slap had seen his spectacular downfall and, though no one said it out loud, everyone knew her husband was responsible. She was treated with a mixture of respect and carefully controlled fear. No one dared to mistreat her. One afternoon, as she was preparing to leave for the day, a young resident approached her hesitantly. "Nurse Elizabeth? I just wanted to thank you." "Thank me? For what?" "My sister died 2 years ago from a medication made by Medicure. We tried to get justice, but they had too many lawyers, too much money. When the truth about their safety violations came out, when Kang Ji-hoon was arrested, it felt like she finally got the justice she deserved. I know somehow you were connected to that." Elizabeth felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm so sorry about your sister." "She was only 19, the resident said, her own eyes bright with tears. "But because of what happened to you, because you had someone who loved you enough to seek justice, my sister and all the other victims got justice too. So thank you." That evening, Elizabeth told Dae-sung about the conversation. He listened quietly, his hand resting on her belly as always. "I never thought about it that way," he admitted. "I was focused on punishing Ji-hoon for what he did to you. But you're right, bringing down his company meant justice for all his other victims too." "Sometimes revenge and justice are the same thing," Elizabeth said. "Sometimes," he agreed. "But only when the person seeking revenge has a conscience. You keep me grounded, Elizabeth. You keep me human." At 38 weeks pregnant, Elizabeth finally agreed to take maternity leave. She was at home, trying to decide on final details for the nursery, when her phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello? Mrs. Kim? This is Officer Lee from Seoul Central Prison. I'm calling about Kang Ji-hoon." Elizabeth's heart skipped. "What about him?" "He's asking to speak with you. He says he has something important to tell you before, well, he's been diagnosed with terminal pancreatic cancer. He has maybe 3 months to live." Elizabeth sat down heavily. "He wants to see me. He says he needs to apologize properly." "You're under no obligation to see him, of course. But he asked me to call." After she hung up, Elizabeth sat in silence. Dae-sung was at a business meeting across town. She could call him, ask him what to do. But she already knew what she needed to do. 2 days later, with Dae-sung beside her, he'd absolutely refused to let her go alone. Elizabeth walked into Seoul Central Prison. Ji-hoon had been moved to the prison hospital, a small room with barred windows and the smell of antiseptic. He looked nothing like the arrogant billionaire who'd slapped her. Prison and illness had reduced him to a shadow, thin and pale, his eyes hollow. "You came," he said, his voice weak. "I didn't think you would." "I almost didn't," Elizabeth admitted. Dae-sung stood behind her, silent and watchful. "I'm dying," Ji-hoon said bluntly. "The doctors say 3 months, maybe less. I guess that's karma too, isn't it? I sold medications that killed people, and now I'm dying." "Why did you want to see me?" "Because you're the one I can't stop thinking about," he said. "Not the people who died from my medications. Not my ex-wife or my mother. You. The pregnant woman I slapped because I was having a bad day and thought I could do whatever I wanted." He struggled to sit up straighter. "I've had a lot of time to think in here. About the kind of man I was. The kind of man my father would have been ashamed of. I became everything I hated, cruel, selfish, consumed by money and power." Tears ran down his gaunt face. "I can't undo what I did. I can't bring back the people who died because of my company's negligence. I can't take back hitting you. But I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. Not because your husband destroyed me, I deserve that. But because you were just trying to do your job, and I hurt you for it." Elizabeth was quiet for a long moment. "I forgive you," she finally said. Ji-hoon's eyes widened in shock. "What?" "I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because holding on to anger and hate isn't good for me or my baby. You're dying, and you're sorry. That's enough." "I don't understand," Ji-hoon whispered. "After everything. My wife," Dae-sung spoke for the first time, his voice hard, "is a better person than either of us will ever be. She's showing you mercy you don't deserve. I suggest you accept it gracefully." Ji-hoon nodded, unable to speak through his tears. As they left the prison, Dae-sung pulled Elizabeth close. "You're amazing," he murmured. "I would have let him rot without a second thought." "I know," Elizabeth said. "That's why you need me. To remind you that mercy is strength too." "Is that what we're teaching our daughter? That forgiveness is strength?" "Among other things. We're also teaching her that people who hurt those she loves will face consequences. But that ultimately, holding on to hate only hurts us." "She's going to be extraordinary," Dae-sung said with certainty. "Just like her mother." 1 week later, Elizabeth went into labor. It was 3 in the morning, and Dae-sung went from peacefully sleeping to full alertness in seconds. The hospital. Now. Jin-ho. He was simultaneously calling his driver, helping Elizabeth dress, and trying not to panic. "Dae-sung, breathe," Elizabeth said with a laugh, even through her contraction. "We have time." "We don't have time. Our daughter is coming. We need the best doctors." "I need to call." "You need to calm down," Elizabeth said firmly. "Remember the birthing classes? You're supposed to be the calm one." "Right. Calm. I can do calm." He was absolutely not calm. 12 hours later, after Dae-sung had alternately held her hand, paced the room like a caged tiger, and threatened the medical staff when Elizabeth cried out in pain, their daughter was born. "She's perfect," Dae-sung breathed, staring at the tiny bundle in his arms with absolute wonder. "Elizabeth, she's perfect. What should we name her?" Elizabeth asked, exhausted but glowing. "Nari," Dae-sung said immediately. "It means lily. Pure and beautiful, just like her." "Nari Kim," Elizabeth tested the name. "It's perfect." As Dae-sung held his daughter, cooing to her in Korean, Elizabeth watched them with a heart so full she thought it might burst. This was her family. This dangerous man who'd brought down an empire for her, now reduced to tears by a baby's tiny fingers wrapped around his. 3 months later, Elizabeth received word that Kang Ji-hoon had died in prison. She attended his funeral, just her and Dae-sung. Myri was there, frail but grateful to see them. "Thank you for coming," she said. "And thank you for what you've done for me. The medical care, the apartment. I don't deserve your kindness." "Everyone deserves basic human dignity," Elizabeth said, holding 3-month-old Nari in her arms. "I hope you find peace now." "May I?" Myri asked hesitantly, gesturing to the baby. Elizabeth glanced at Dae-sung, who nodded almost imperceptibly. She carefully transferred Nari to the elderly woman's arms. Myri looked down at the baby with tears streaming down her face. "She's beautiful. So beautiful. I hope her father teaches her to be strong but kind. Powerful but compassionate. Everything my son wasn't." "I will," Dae-sung said quietly. "I promise you that." As they drove home from the funeral, Nari sleeping peacefully in her car seat, Elizabeth took Dae-sung's hand. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "What you did to Ji-hoon?" "No," he said firmly. "He hurt you. He could have hurt our daughter. He was responsible for deaths and suffering. But..." He paused, thinking. "I learned something through all of this. I learned that justice doesn't always have to be about destruction. Sometimes it's about making things right." "You made sure his victims got justice too," Elizabeth pointed out. "The families of the people who died from his medications got settlements. The company was reformed under new management with proper safety protocols. You didn't just destroy, you also built something better." "Because of you," Dae-sung said. "Before I met you, I would have just destroyed and walked away. But you taught me that there's more to justice than revenge." That evening, as they put Nari to bed in her nursery, Dae-sung wrapped his arms around Elizabeth from behind, his hands resting on her stomach. "I love you," he murmured into her hair. "I loved you from the moment you lectured me about seeking proper medical care while pulling a bullet out of my shoulder. I loved you when you didn't run away after learning who I really was. I loved you when you showed compassion to the mother of the man who hurt you. And I love you now, as the mother of my child and the keeper of my conscience." "I love you too," Elizabeth said, turning in his arms to kiss him. "My dangerous, protective, surprisingly gentle husband. Who would have thought the scariest man in Seoul would be wrapped around a baby girl's tiny finger? Everyone who knows me is going to mock me mercilessly, Daesung agreed cheerfully. And I don't care even a little bit. Months turned into years. Nari grew from a baby into a bright, curious toddler. Elizabeth returned to work part-time, still passionate about nursing but also dedicated to her daughter. Daesung continued running his empire, but now every decision was filtered through the question, what kind of world am I building for my daughter? He became more selective about his business dealings, cutting ties with operations that crossed certain moral lines. His men joked that marriage and fatherhood had made him soft, but they said it with respect, because they could see that he was actually stronger, more focused, more purposeful. When Nari was 3, she came home from preschool crying because a boy had pushed her down and taken her toy. What's his name? Daesung asked immediately, already reaching for his phone. I'll have a talk with his parents. Daesung, Elizabeth said warningly. She's 3. This is normal kid stuff. Someone hurt our daughter. Someone pushed her on the playground. You can't terrorize every child who's mean to her. I can't? No, Elizabeth said firmly. What you can do is teach her how to stand up for herself. Teach her to be strong and confident. Teach her that she doesn't need her father to fight all her battles. So Daesung, one of the most feared men in Seoul, got down on his knees in front of his daughter and said, Nari, listen to me. You are strong. You are brave. You are a Kim. When someone tries to take what's yours, you stand up straight, you look them in the eye, and you tell them no. Can you do that? Nari nodded, her tears drying. I'm strong like Daddy. Stronger, Daesung said. Because you have your mother's heart and my strength. That makes you unstoppable. The next day, when the boy tried to take her toy again, Nari stood her ground, and the boy backed down. She came home triumphant, and Daesung celebrated like she'd won a major battle. That's my girl, he said proudly. That's my warrior princess. Watching them, Elizabeth felt a wave of contentment. This was what they'd fought for, this peaceful, normal life. A life where the biggest drama was playground conflicts, not criminal empires or revenge plots. But she also knew that Daesung's world was never completely peaceful. There were still threats, still rivals, still dangers lurking in the shadows. The difference was that now he had something precious to protect, something that made him more careful but also more dangerous to anyone who threatened his family. One evening, when Nari was asleep and they were alone, Elizabeth asked, Do you ever miss it? The way things were before? When you didn't have to worry about a family? Daesung pulled her onto his lap, his arms wrapping around her. Not even for a second. Before you, I was powerful but empty. I had money and influence and fear, but I didn't have purpose. I didn't have love. I didn't have a reason to wake up in the morning beyond accumulating more power. He kissed her softly. You gave me everything that matters. You gave me a home, a daughter, a reason to be better than I was. I would give up every bit of my empire before I'd give up this, you and me and Nari. You say the most romantic things for a crime lord, Elizabeth teased. Former crime lord, he corrected with a smile. I'm going legitimate, remember? In 5 years, all my operations will be completely legal. And you'll be just a boring businessman? I'll never be boring, Daesung promised. But I will be the kind of man my daughter can be proud of. The kind of man who deserves you. Years later, when Nari was 10 and starting to ask questions about what her father really did for a living, Elizabeth and Daesung sat her down for a serious conversation. Daddy has made some bad choices in his life, Daesung told her honestly. I've done things I'm not proud of. But I've tried very hard to be better, to build something good, because of you and your mother. Are you a bad person? Nari asked, her young face serious. I'm a person who's done bad things, Daesung said. But I'm trying to be good. The difference is important. Mommy says everyone deserves a chance to change, Nari said. Is that what you did? You changed? I'm still changing, Daesung admitted. Every day, I try to be the kind of father you deserve. Nari hugged him tightly. I think you're the best daddy in the world. Over his daughter's head, Daesung met Elizabeth's eyes, and she saw tears there. This dangerous, powerful man, brought to tears by a child's simple acceptance and love. That night, after Nari was in bed, Daesung found the small box he'd hidden away years ago. Inside was a single photograph, the only one that existed of Kang Ji-hoon before everything fell apart. He'd kept it as a reminder. "What are you going to do with that?" Elizabeth asked, finding him in his study. "Burn it," Daesung said. "I don't need reminders anymore. I don't need to hold on to that anger. You were right all along. Forgiveness is strength. Letting go is strength. I'm ready to let go now." Together, they burned the photograph in the fireplace, watching as the flames consumed it. "It's done," Daesung said quietly. "That chapter is closed." "And what chapter are we in now?" Elizabeth asked, leaning against him. "The happily ever after," he said, pulling her close. "Where the reformed crime lord and the compassionate nurse raise their brilliant daughter and grow old together." "That sounds perfect," Elizabeth murmured. "It is perfect," Daesung agreed. "Because I have you." In the end, the story that started with violence and revenge became a story of redemption and love. Kang Ji-hoon got the justice he deserved, but more importantly, he got the mercy he didn't deserve. His mother was cared for in her final years. The victims of his company's negligence received compensation and closure. And Elizabeth and Daesung built a life together that was stronger than either of them could have imagined. A life where love conquered hate, where compassion was more powerful than revenge, where a crime lord could become a devoted father, and where a nurse's kindness could change the trajectory of so many lives. Years later, when someone asked Daesung what the most dangerous thing he'd ever done was, he didn't talk about criminal operations or territorial disputes or acts of revenge. "The most dangerous thing I ever did," he said with a smile, "was fall in love with a woman who saw past what I was to what I could become. She made me want to be better. She made me believe I could be better." That kind of transformation is terrifying and exhilarating and absolutely worth every risk. And Elizabeth, hearing this, would smile and take his hand, because she knew the truth. Love hadn't made him weak. Love had made him human. And that humanity, that capacity for growth and change and mercy, was the greatest strength of all. Their daughter Nari grew up knowing that her father had been a dangerous man, but that he'd chosen love and family over power and fear. She learned that people could change, that mercy was a gift you gave yourself as much as others, and that true strength was protecting those who couldn't protect themselves while showing compassion to those who didn't deserve it. She learned these lessons from watching her parents, the nurse who'd shown kindness to a wounded crime lord and mercy to the man who'd hurt her, and the crime lord who'd learned that the greatest power wasn't in inspiring fear, but in choosing love. And when people asked Nari what she wanted to be when she grew up, she said, "Strong like my father and kind like my mother." That's the best of everything. In the end, that's what this story was about, not revenge, though there was revenge. Not love, though there was love. Not transformation, though there was transformation. It was about the truth that the best version of ourselves emerges when we're loved unconditionally and challenged to be better. When we choose mercy over vengeance, compassion over cruelty, and love over everything else. The arrogant billionaire who slapped a pregnant nurse learned that actions have consequences. The Korean Mafia CEO learned that true power comes from protecting and nurturing, not just from inspiring fear. And the compassionate nurse learned that her strength and kindness could change the world, one person, one choice, one act of mercy at a time. This was their story. A story that started with a slap and ended with a family. A story that proved love really can conquer all, even the darkest pasts and the deepest wounds. And they lived not just happily ever after, but purposefully ever after, building a legacy of redemption that would echo through generations. If you love this story of revenge, redemption, and romance, smash that like button, drop a comment telling me your favorite part, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional, dramatic, and unforgettable stories. Until next time, remember, love is the most powerful force in the universe, and mercy is the greatest strength. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.